his idea was that you two need to sync up and kind of hash it out to speed it up, because left alone to Mike, it might take a little bit longer than originally we wanted this process to take, right? Ultimately, we want to kind of get this done in about 30 to 45 days max.
Sure. So no, I'm happy to help Mike with that. I mean, I think that, on the one hand, I'm sort of interested to have somebody who, isn't going to follow my every lead and not break anything. I like the idea of someone trying something and breaking stuff. So, but at the same token, I don't want it to be a frustrating experience where, you're basically, here's some code, figure it out kind of thing. Right. So I think that there's, sort of a hybrid approach there of, trying to let somebody else who's never worked with it before do new and interesting things. And I fully expect that there's going to be bugs that need to be fixed. I also expect that there'll be issues like, hey, can it do that? And then the answer is, well, no, but do we need it to do that?
So, yeah, I guess what I would say is, originally, I looked at it from a scope of work and a time scale thing. And when we were talking, because that was when we had that meeting, or when y'all had that meeting, I was kind of in and out packing, so I wasn't really super there. But when y'all had that meeting, I guess that was before I even looked at the code, and so I was basically just saying, like, basically I can't approve something I haven't seen, so there's that. But from looking at it, I mean, it seems legit. So I mean, I definitely want to get my hands on it and play around with it, and as far as like developing it further into like an actual, like thing that's really out there and being used. I think, Loves is a good test case for you, Matt. And I think that it's a good way for us to, test the waters and see we're learning a lot about the pros and cons of every different blockchain we try. Like we get in there and we're like, okay, this is super cool, and then you find out some limitations. And honestly, I think we have a great chance to, if we find limitations in Matt's code versus if we found limitations in Neo or something like that, we have the guy who wrote it, and me, who's like pretty much read the whole code base and is pretty much learning how it goes. So I'm probably going to be involved in this project more, as we go. And if we do find limitations, like you said, it's a matter of us just getting together and fixing it. So
yeah, I think hopefully we can take, what you've seen as pros and cons on the other platforms and make them all pros on our side and no cons, right?
Yeah. Right. So
I mean, we have the rare opportunity right now where we can do breaking changes, because there's no one who's, we don't have an historical chain of blocks that people are depending upon. So we can break things as much as we want until we're satisfied that we're ready to not break things again,
Exactly.
So I think we have a small window of time, and, we get to stand on the shoulders of giants, so to speak, because we get to look at how everybody else has done it and seen what they've seen, and then do our own thing.
Yeah, because
that's a great segue. So you both make great points, and I think moving forward, this is a great combination having you two work on this part of the project. However, I do want to kind of put down, or at least estimate what time frame we're looking here. So between the both of you, what is the likelihood of completing this transfer from the ERC20 or Ethereum blockchain to your blockchain, Matt, based on both your skills? And again, I know you haven't really worked that in depth with each other, but I just need a ballpark figure. And, as time goes on and I come back and meet with you, you can kind of really get more details. So, okay, well, I gave you this time. It's probably half that at this point. So go ahead.
So I guess I'll say, because I guess my original estimate for you was like about 3 weeks ish of because it and that was like with no support. If it was just me trying to figure it out, I probably could have something put together in about 3 weeks. But after looking at the code and also having access to Matt, if he's willing to just chat me up when I got questions or whatever, I think it could be done more quickly than that, just
Yeah.
because a lot of the functionality of the token is already hashed out. The hard part was figuring out what we wanted it to do. The easy part is coding it. Like, so, I mean, and I'm much more in my comfort zone with Java because I've been working with Java forever than learning a whole new language like Solidity. Like, I mean, that was kind of a just wing it and figure it out kind of deal. So, I mean, I'm a lot more comfortable with Java just because I use it like 90%. Like that's pretty much like, I mean, I'm doing a lot of JS stuff now, but like, that's been my main money maker for a while is Java code. So,
So based on your comfort level with Java, what is your estimate?
I mean, let's be conservative and just say like 2.5 weeks. Like, cause basically I'll go once I get back home, I'll probably like do a write up of just like what the functionality in some pseudocode should do, and then at that point it's just coding it. So I have a couple of questions for Matt that might change or like skew that opinion, but I think it's doable pretty quick as far as like, because the way I do development and the way I think it should be done is I mean you write your code and you're gonna do changes and modifications to it, so you get it out there, you test it, and then it's basically test driven development. You test it, you see what screwed up, you're getting exceptions or whatever, you test it again, you fix that, and so you know I definitely want to give myself time for testing is, I guess, what I'm saying.
All right, so you're saying about 2 to 2.5 weeks. Matt, what are your thoughts? Anything to add?
Well, I haven't seen the Solidity code or have the full details of what the love token is supposed to do. In talking with Charles about how he wanted it to work and what I understand about it, I could probably, by myself, hack it into the system in, like 3 days time. But I don't think that's what we should do. As I said earlier, I think it's important to, have Mike, involved and, help understand how he would attack the problem and what he would break and things like that. Mm-hmm. Also, I suspect that what we'll find is that the contract code, which right now is very rudimentary, you write JavaScript to do it. I suspect that there's going to need to be some beefing up of how that works on the platform based upon the pros and cons that we talked about before. And so I suspect what will happen is we can make it work relatively quick, but we're not going to want it to work like that long term. We're going to want to basically change some platform level stuff based upon having got it to work and knowing the compromises that were made. And I think that's where you're going to spend maybe a couple of weeks, sort of after you get it working, redoing it to the way you actually want it to work. You know what I mean?
No, and I get what you're saying. So that brings up another segue. And before I jump on that, just want to confirm between the both of you, to get the contract transferred over to Matt's blockchain, we're probably on average looking at about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that it's perfectly reasonable to assume that by the end of the month we can be, sending love from person to person kind of thing.
Okay, and so that brings the next segue that you mentioned earlier. I haven't gotten in contact with Lamar, but I think he also will be a great person in this position to also help test the blockchain. So once the contract, the smart contract itself has been created between the both of you and has been moved over to Matt's blockchain, I think it'd be an ideal situation to kind of get Lamar in there at some point so he can also start to test the integrity of Matt's blockchain, make sure the contract is working properly, and try to reduce any Sybil attacks or whatever kind of errors that can come through the blockchain, or whether it be exceptions, what have you.
I think, I mean, I don't know, Matt might be a better person to say this, but because I don't know how often he's doing modifications and changing code and whatnot, but I think given the resources, we might want to just start up some mining nodes now and see, how that works from the first standpoint. I don't know if that is a viable option or a good idea or not, but I think that's probably. I kind of think that because for example, when you set up a test network with Ethereum, it takes a while to generate enough ether like on the network to really do stuff. And I'm sure you've already attacked this or whatever, but uh, as far as like the backbone of every blockchain is its miners. So you know, I think we should test the integrity of the mining nodes as well while we're trying to figure out how this contract works.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. I think we can look into doing that toward the end of the contract, the smart contract migration. I don't want you both to be, too overwhelmed. I want you kind of focus on one thing at a time before we start jumping on to the next big thing. But you do bring a good point.
Well, I guess to my understanding, it's just a bunch of scripting codes, right? Like you just terminal codes that you would use to start a mine, right, Matt?
Well, right now the mining software basically is built into the platform, and it's just run as a separate program, and it essentially turns on and connects to the node of your choice. You specify the host on the command line, and it connects up, and it starts working on new blocks and looking for transactions to stick in the block. And so obviously if there's no transactions, it just generates blocks with its reward that are empty besides the reward transaction. If there is pending transactions, then it adds those into the blocks.
Yeah.
So basically you're saying the same thing Mike is saying. At some point, the mining nodes need to be active and created in order for the blockchain to actually function in the sense of rewards and transactions and what have you as you're testing, correct?
Yeah, and as far as resources, we're willing to stand up nodes and miners, no problem. I think Charles said he wanted to do the same thing. So I mean, that's just a matter of clicking the button whenever we want to.
Well, I guess what I was saying is, since I have a couple of computers lying around, and what you were saying about the difficulty being low enough to really be using my throwaway computers for it. Like I could set up a couple of nodes as well, just so I could kind of see what's. Huh? Yeah, I'm sure Len could do one too.
Yeah, you don't need a lot of computing power right now, because one of the things that's different about this is that we can put in unlimited transactions inside of a block. Now again, there's probably actual practical limits. It's not unlimited, but there's no system limitation built in. So what that's going to mean is that the difficulty isn't going to get so out of whack so fast like it did in blockchain, where people are really competing for those blocks and transaction fees.
Unless you let me throw an ASIC on the network. But
yeah, we're not gonna do that.
Yeah, no, I'm just playing. But so I will say, as a slight segue, I have there's two things that I really like about your blockchain, and there's actually a question I have about one of the things I like. But so obviously the first thing I like is the transaction fees. We don't even need to talk about that. But what I did like, because we were talking earlier, you were saying that every token would, in theory, have its own personal blockchain.
Yes.
Do you have to, so if you're a miner, do you mine the specific blockchains, or are you mining the whole system and that power goes to different where it needs to go?
So the way it's set up right now is every node and every miner works on all the chains that are on the platform. And what I built into the mining is essentially a priority queue on transactions. Because if you've got multiple transactions for multiple chain, which one do you work on, right?
Yeah.
So you need to prioritize. So I prioritized it on the chain blockchain, which is Tokhn, because that's the assumed one that is going to long-term have the most intrinsic value. But the way I set up the miner is it uses a pluggable comparator. So essentially, if you want to change the priority, you write your own little comparator, and then you can have your miner use whatever priority you wish. So, for example, if you want your miner to only mine one particular token, you could do that, or you could say, I want this token first and then these others separate, you know, however you want to do it. It's all pluggable. So I've tried, you might've seen that in the object-oriented code there, is that I'm trying to make certain things pluggable so that people can, you know, make certain choices if they want to.
Which was those command things basically that you pretty much do in the what you call it, the command prompt or the terminal.
Well, yeah. So some of that is command line and driven. Some of those switches, but other things are more code based that allow developers to make customizations. So there's two places where that's done. One is what I just talked about on the mining side. Another place is how you deal with storage. So for example, I've got a version where you can run with a completely in-memory approach to your blockchains, which is obviously fast and low resource. The default actually uses the MapDB library, which is just a really lightweight persistence mechanism in Java. But you can also write your own to hit a MySQL database or what have you. You know, so so that's an example of being able to plug in whatever you want. So we'll look at whether there's other places where we want to plug in. I'm now in the process of changing the network code away from Java sockets and object streams over to Google protocol buffers. If you guys wanted any kind of background on that, I did a Zoom with Charles and some developers on Friday, kind of running through that. When I make that change, that will allow us to use third-party languages besides Java, where you'll be able to write nodes or miners in other languages besides Java and plug in.
Yeah, I kind of, the way I was thinking about this going would be like some sort of like JSON parameterization where you could like basically control the environment. Like you say, okay, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and that would be in like a JSON file, and that would be the way you customize the way that the token works. And even like you said, like with different languages, you could go so far as to create APIs, and all you do is send out JSON to those APIs or whatever.
So I'm using protocol buffers in gRPC, and so gRPC describes the API, and it's available with stubs in a variety of languages, all the languages one would expect. And protocol buffers is you know, a much more high performance approach than JSON. And gRPC actually works over HTTP2, which is also higher performance than, you know, doing JSON over HTTP1.
Yeah.
So, you know, it works the same kind of concept as your typical JSON APIs, but it's going to be actually higher performance while still supporting multiple languages.
Cool.
It's a really good protocol that Google put together with that.
Okay.
So, quick question, and thank you for sharing that. So I want to double back a little bit to a few things, and just right off the rip. Matt, what is the official name of your blockchain? I'm tired of calling it.
Yeah, it's we're calling it Tokhn. So that's Tokhn, and I got the domain token.io.
Okay.
So does that have to do with you being in the pot industry, or like?
No. So what we're gonna do is we've decided on Pheno as the token for traceability on the cannabis side, and essentially what's going to happen is, as you describe more and more pheno traits of the product, you know, it essentially increases the amount of pheno tokens associated with it.
Oh, that's that's actually a cool name now that you think about it.
So what you're going to have is Tokhn is going to be the platform and the name of the platform's token. And then on top of that, we'll have Pheno. We've got Test, which is both a test token and a test network, right? And then I guess we'll have Love here shortly. Yeah. And then what's going to happen is on any given token and chain, you'll be able to trade those without transaction fee. But if you want to use smart contracts, there'll be a transaction fee that is done in token.
Nice.
And there'll be atomic swaps built in, so you'll be able to swap from one to the other if you want.
Oh, between the different tokens, like so love
Right.
for Pheno.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect over time it's not going to really be someone wanting to exchange love for Pheno, because love and traceability really kind of have nothing to do with each other. What's
Yeah.
going to be more likely is that you're going to want to swap them for the platform token.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah, that makes
so the platform token will almost come like the reserve currency of
kind of like
all
Ether.
the chains. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So yeah, I guess I was just using love and Pheno as an example, but yeah, I get what you're saying. And so yeah, I think that's cool. And honestly, like, that should be really easy to do because we're pretty much the exchange for all of the tokens at that point. So all of the tokens on your platform can pretty much immediately, since you already are doing zero transaction fees, they can pretty much immediately be transferred between each other pretty much for free.
Yeah, as long as you find willing parties, right?
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think.
So, and then I decided right now we're using the approach that Bitcoin has of having in the network enumeration the actual IPs of the seed nodes. I was going to change that over to DNS and use latency based DNS so we can point people directly to the closest node without them having to figure all that out. So the thinking there is that we'll have basically for each token, we'll have, it as a subdomain of token.io that will resolve the DNS for them. But then also if someone wants to run a custom domain, for their token, they can. So I don't know if you guys have thought about that with love or anything like that, whether you care to have a custom domain or what.
Well, so I think so. There's definitely the possibility with Ether. So I saw that with there's the option to do that in Remix.
Mm-hmm.
I assume that's to keep people from like creating another love token on the network or something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean there's a lot that goes into decision making there, but I mean to a certain extent it's pretty cool to to think about. You can have token name dot token, so like love dot token kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why I came up with this name token, as a play on words, obviously.
So is that the domain for the mining, or the domain like would you be able to like?
That's for everything. So if we build a website to talk about the platform, we can put it up there. We can do the DNS for the nodes, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And honestly, that would make your page adapt without any extra work, pretty much.
Yeah, and in fact, if you guys wanted, I know there's talk about building a wallet, like a web-based wallet. If you wanted to put the web-based wallet up on the web on that domain, that's possible too, of course.
Yeah, I'm all about getting freebies for doing the same work and not doing it twice. So.
Yeah. So I mean, my feeling is that eventually this is all going to get seeded into some sort of organization, caretaker kind of organization. So it'll have the domain, it'll have websites, it can do all those things. So for now, I'm really just uploading the stuff to GitHub, and as we go, we'll get more formalized.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, that works for me too, and I appreciate the work both of you are putting together.
Yeah, so especially if there's people that you guys have that are web designers and stuff like that can put together websites and documentation, that's all going to be key as we move forward.
And so with deploying the contract, does that mean like as I deploy the contract, I'm also buying that domain at the same time? And is that how that works?
Yeah. So my take is that the system wasn't set up like where you would go to our API and try and make it a token. I've got it more like it has to be compiled in. So it has to be an approved PR into the central GitHub repository. And so what I'm thinking right now is that the organization that would approve the PR is going to also be able to allocate the subdomains and things like that. So it's a little different than your typical platforms, but I think that's a good thing, because I don't think we necessarily want, anybody just building tokens and, stuff like that. I think we want really people who are going to participate in the platform.
Yeah.
Agreed. So, it's a good point, guys. And I guess I'll close it out with one final question. This is actually directed towards you, man. You did talk about it briefly, but these resources that you have, these devs, will they be focusing solely on the token blockchain, or could they possibly be additional contract resources for our group in the case of whatever, we don't get the resources we need in time when we need to start going live with Jarvis or the like too?
Well, what I'm hoping is that whatever work has to be done gets done at the platform level as opposed to the token level, if you will. And so as we see things that need to happen for the traceability token, I'm going to have our guys contribute that directly to the platform so that everybody benefits. And I think that's the expectation behind an open source platform. If you can't leverage your resources in a way that's shared with other people, you're never going to get anywhere. So that's going to be a focus there. As far as how we deal with, let's say somebody else's token, let's say Jarvis, for example, that needs changes to the platform. I assume that's going to work like your typical, sort of open source community, is that the contributors will probably want to make those changes because those changes are good for the platform. And, the more people that use it and the more good changes that people come up with, the better we all are.
And I see this thing as possibly being amorphous when you we can customize it for our purposes, and it wouldn't disrupt. So like, let's say we wanted Solidity and Ethereum to change something just for us. That would affect everybody that's already up in Solidity. But by you having separate blockchains, and we were kind of talking about this whole thing with the Genesis node, and like the contract would be there and stuff like that. I think that the differences in the separate blockchains, I think, allow an aspect of customization. I'm not sure yet, but like I think that's something that we might want to think about, is that, and I don't want to get like too crazy with it, but like you could possibly do changes on one blockchain and not affect everybody else.
Yeah, and so that's some of the things that we're going to have to think through, what it becomes parameterized out to the individual tokens versus being, set at the platform level. And so I've made some of those choices already, but that doesn't mean that there's not opportunity for further changes there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Sounds good. So that pretty much clears the air for me. Once you guys get a chance, take a look at Scrummage. I just uploaded one of the backlog items for you two working on the smart contract transfer to from Ethereum to the token blockchain. And if you have any additional edits that you want to, put to it, because you can't change it from your side, definitely let me know and I'll update it. But I've assigned it to you, Mike. But knowing Matt will be helping. And
yeah,
I'll put it for 2 weeks. When do you think you can get started? When do you both think you can meet up and actually start working?
I mean, I can start when I get home. I'm kind of not really thinking about that right now.
No, it's fine. I need a time frame to start the sprint.
So let's say we'll start the sprint Tuesday. That cool?
How about you, Matt? Is that okay with you?
It's fine by me.
All right. Sounds good. Alrighty, gentlemen. That's it from my end. We can meet. I don't know if you'll be able to make the dev meeting, but if you can, that'd be great. If not, we should have it recorded and we'll be able to get access to it later. Enjoy.
What time's the dev meeting?
So it's 11 p.m., 11 a.m.
Pacific
Pacific Standard Time. I'm sorry, I'm still thinking about
Yeah.
tech. And it's from 11 to 12 p.m.
It's what,
Okay.
2 p.m. Eastern. So
Okay.
yeah, talk Eastern and Math. He's on the East Coast.
Crazy. But yeah, if you can make it, that'd be great. If not, don't worry. We'll have it recorded. And I think we covered most of the main issues here. So that was a good deal.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay. Well, sounds good.
Thanks for coming through, Matt.
And I think Charles is the one that owns this call, so he'll be the one to close it out.
Charles is here.
All
He's
right,
fine.
got it. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. All right. Bye.
All right, we're done.